The next hour, you get to know 4 startups in MusicTech. And they provide musicians with new tools, or they change the way we can listen to music. And there will be 4 lightning talks, so the speakers will come up and have a talk for 10 minutes, and afterwards there will be a little discussion, and there you can place your questions. The first talk is from Vanja Steinholtz from Sweden, so please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you. Hi everyone, very nice to be here in Berlin, this lovely city, and at Republica. This is such an awesome conference. My name is Vanja, and I'm a musician and songwriter. I'm also the head of communication at Soundtrap. And Soundtrap is an online collaborative recording studio. So it's completely cloud-based, and it's in your browser, and a place where you can be creative and record your music. It works on all devices, so it works on your smartphone, your tablet, your laptop, and it works on Chrome, Android, Windows, Apple, iOS. So this makes it very easy for you to be creative wherever you are. And you can open up your music. If you have recorded something on your smartphone, you could actually open it up on your laptop at home, and it doesn't matter what kind of laptop it is, and you will find all your music there without sending files back and forth. So this is what it could look like when you open up a DAW. If you're a beginner, it might be hard to know if you're supposed to run an airplane or record guitar when you see this. So this is a problem that we wanted to solve. We wanted to make it easy for everyone to make music, and we wanted to reduce complexity. So we made this very easy to use and simple interface so that you can start recording your software instruments and audio and play around with our loops. We have about 3,000 built-in loops immediately when you are entering the studio. We also have a collaborative function inside the studio, which I will come back to very soon. As a music maker, you might come up with ideas on uninspected places, like on the bus or when you're out for a walk or at a party with friends. So we wanted to make it easy for you to just capture your ideas and record them instantly when you're on the go, and to be creative wherever you are. One thing with making music on your computer is that you can actually make everything by yourself, which is awesome, but sometimes you don't want to do it by yourself. You might want to do it together with others. So that's why we created the Soundtrap community. We have about 500,000 users, so it's a very good place to find people to play with all around the world. You can just browse around here and listen to other people's music, or if you have a specific request, you could create a shout, just like Leah did here. So she says, "Hi, me and my friend Vanja want some guitar on our new pop song, who's in?" And Axel sees this shout, and he answers and gets invited to the project. So Leah and I and Axel actually shares a project. He records some guitar, and I'm at a different place, listening to him while he records his guitar, and I can see him inside the studio. I can see what he records. And we could actually video chat and text chat with each other inside the studio. So everything is in the same window. You could say that it's a combined GarageBand, Skype, Messenger, Google Docs in the same window. My friend Leah, friend and colleague Leah, did a video on a collaboration she did in Soundtrap. So let me show you that video. Let's see. Oh, sorry. Yes, that's Soundtrap. So all of us working at the office, we're about 10 people now, and we have our office in Stockholm. We're all musicians, and we're all nerds, so even though it's an easy-to-use studio, we got a bunch of layers with effects and synthesizers as well, of course. So there are pretty much to explore even for the advanced user. Just a couple of days ago, we launched our beta version of the app. So before that, we were only available inside the browser, but if you go to App Store, you can download Soundtrap, the Soundtrap app for free and try it out if you want to. So thank you for your attention. Thanks.
Thank you, Vanja. And next on stage is Julian Vogels, and he will explain the idea behind Soundbrenner. Julian, so please give a welcome.
Hi. So welcome to my talk. I start with a question because we have a panel afterwards where we talk more about this question. So how do music tech startups actually disrupt the music business? I think I love the question because there's so much we can actually do. I have studied music technology, and there's so many interesting disciplines in music tech where you can actually have disruptive innovation. Also, I believe that the music market is actually quite conservative, where the customers actually are always looking for the new thing actually to discover. So in music tech, you have these different disciplines, and I'll give you a little startup idea for every one of them, so you get an idea of how much potential there is actually. First of all, in the digital signal processing, I think, think about the next app that transforms your voice, which I don't know how scalable that is, but DSP is kind of like the math of the whole thing, so you need it in every other discipline. Then psychoacoustics. Think about, well, a system that recommends you music based on the mood you feel or to change your mood. Or even an app that actually tunes your headphones exactly to the perfect listening experience because it's based on your personal audio perception. For example, for computation modeling, that's where you bring an instrument to the digital world with all its physical details. Think about a guitar customization tool online where you can build your own guitar and it will sound in the browser exactly how this guitar will sound when it's produced. Or music information retrieval. That's the guys who make the most money in MusicTech because they build algorithms for Amazon to recommend music or for any like Pandora and all those things. Or a friend of mine, he actually built a system where you sing and there's a virtual band that just plays along in harmony. Then in digital musical instrument design, this is actually my field of expertise. So this is where we reinvent the way how we make music with devices, with controllers. And that's also what applies most to my startup company, Soundbrenner, where we actually don't have a musical instrument, but a musical accessory. And I'll show you first what it's actually all about. So DMI design what is important is it's 3 parts. So you have the controller, you have where is the input side, the sound synthesis, where this is the output side, and the mapping brings all together. So now these 3 parts are separate and exchangeable. And that makes it so diverse and so versatile. You can actually make any sounds with any device, and you can change them. So working in that field, I gained some key skills that we all could use in Soundbrenner, and that the whole company actually are all musicians. We all love music tech, and we do exactly that. So we build electronics with sensors, actuators. We built prototypes, DIY. You have to know about human-computer interaction in music, gestures, motion capture, filtering, DSP, all those things are important. So what we actually do is the Soundbrenner Pulse. Soundbrenner Pulse is a smart, variable metronome. So it's a music accessory. It's a tool for musicians for performance and practice. It keeps you on the beat, and it's powered by vibration. It means that you don't need the annoying click track anymore in your ear. But instead, you just turn it on like this, and it will vibrate on your skin and let you still feel the rhythm. And also, you can connect it to a smartphone. You can even connect multiple of those devices to your smartphone. And they all stay in sync. So with this idea, we went actually pretty far. Since January, we launched, and we shipped 5,000 devices worldwide in 74 countries. We have 20,000 app users right now, growing. And last year, we had a big crowdfunding success of $250,000 in pre-orders. We just signed distribution deals for Europe, USA, and China. And we have a high customer satisfaction. And we have a distributed team of 9 people in Berlin, in Hong Kong, where we produce, and in the USA, in Los Angeles. So now, I just wanted to show you a little video of the actual device. This is the main unit. And inside, you see, there's a big Era M vibration motor that's very, very strong. So it's like 7G strong. That's the unit of vibration. And it's a smartphone is about 1 or 2G. So it's very strong, and you need that for the instrument. It's controlled by a haptic driver, so it's super precise too. It's also very important. And here you have the comparison again with the smartphone. As you see, you can actually start and stop it by double tapping it. You can also just tap in a rhythm, like this. And there's also a wheel on the device, so you can just control the companion app directly with the device. So you don't need to have the app in your hand. You can then, if you're happy with the rhythm, that is totally customizable, you can actually store that rhythm in a set list. And you can set accents, you can set different subdivisions, so 8th notes or 16th notes or triplets even. And you can customize the color of the device and the vibrations, or switch the light off altogether if you're, for example, on stage. So I just wanted to give you some impressions of our journey so far. So we prototyped the device, we tested with many musicians. Then we went on to electrical engineering and did the molds in China. Then we actually mass manufactured in China and brought the device to the customer. So this is from left to right, to the customer's home. And then we got our happy customers who all sent us pictures. And we grow a community online so that they actually exchange how they use it and what they do with it. And that's actually something we want to build upon. So what's very cool about our device is that you can actually always update the software because it's an app, and the app can update the hardware. And so what we expand on is this whole online community thing. So in the future, you can share set lists. The whole band can organize their tracks in the app. And we also want to build in some algorithm to listen what you're playing as you're playing it, and analyze it and compare it to the metronome. So we can actually tell, well, this week you were 80% on the beat, next week you're 90% on the beat. And that makes it somehow like a fitness tracker for music. And a little proof that actually small music startups can disrupt the market is that we went to the NAMM show, which is the biggest trade show for music equipment this year, and we won the prize, the best in show, and got lots of retailer interest, and we're growing quickly. Yeah. So, yeah, that's my little presentation of our ID. Thanks.
Thank you, Julian. Time for question is later. Now on stage there is Daniel Büttner from Lohfeld, and he will talk about the basslet. Basslet. Okay, good. Have fun.
Hello, everyone. Is the mic working? So hi, I'm Daniel. Thanks to publica for having us here. I'm the CEO and founder of Lohfeld, and we create something called the basslet. But before I dive into the basslet and tell you all about why it's important to feel the bass rather than just hear it, I thought I'll just give you a quick introduction to actually who I am, where I come from, what my background is in music tech, because that will give you a little bit better idea of why we came up with this idea. So my background is I'm technically a professionally trained bass player. So I started playing music when I was 10. I started playing piano, did a lot of work in synthesizers, had an Atari to make electronic music. And a few years later, when I was about 13 or so, I actually abandoned the whole computer music making and started playing upright bass. And one of the driving factors there was that I was really missing this physical sensation of instruments. You know, if you have a guitar in your hand and you plug a string, you can feel that instrument. If you do that on an upright bass, it's a very visceral sensation of making music. And I always felt that digital instruments, MIDI keyboards and computers, they didn't really have that. You just press a key on a MIDI keyboard and there's nothing coming back to you as a performer. And I just felt like that's a really kind of boring way of making music, because the interaction with the instrument is not that interesting. So anyway, I pursued my career as a professional upright bass player, played jazz, classical music, went to a couple different countries, stayed in Liverpool, in New York for a while, and came back to Germany and started working for a company called eMagic. I don't know if some people who make music for a long time might remember them. They were acquired by Apple later on. This is now Apple Logic. So this was actually developed in Hamburg in the 90s. And then later after that, when I came to Berlin, I started working for a company called Ableton. Ableton is basically now one of the industry leaders in music creation. It's a software company that started making a software for live performance. So it's really streamlined for very quick workflows, really stable environment. You can go on stage and perform music live. But then later on, Ableton Live also moved more and more into the studio, because people making music in the studio, they also realized that live workflow of being really immediate, really fast, also benefits them in making music in the studio. While I was working with Ableton, I was basically product manager for instruments, effects, and something called Max for Live. So while I was working for Ableton, I spent a lot of time in music studios. I worked with producers and musicians, and just watching them, like looking over their shoulders, how they make music, and try to learn how we can improve their music making, and sort of seeing where the boundaries are of digital instruments. And as part of that, there was one thing that was really, really apparent. So if you watch someone making music in front of a computer, they literally just sit there with a trackpad and they click in beats and just construct basically music with a trackpad. And I found this to be a very, very non-intuitive way of making music, especially for me coming from more the classical background of music making. And one of the things that struck me is, again, even 15 years later, after I switched from my Atari to an upright bass, I could see people making music on a laptop, and it's a completely dead interface to music making. You press a button, and there's nothing coming back. There's no string vibrating. There's just nothing, no feeling to you as a performer on what your music does and the energy level of your music. And from that, an idea emerged, which was basically, I want to make music perceivable through the body and not only through the ears. Because for me as a bass player, that's one of the most essential things of making music. And anyone here who goes to a club or live concert, you must know that feeling. You stand in front of that big PA and you feel the music throughout your entire body. And I find this, especially nowadays when you look at electronic music, it's such an important part of listening to music. And so we came up with something called the basslet. The basslet is basically a miniature subwoofer that you wear on your arm, and it gives you this energy of a live concert anywhere you want. You can basically hook it up to your smartphone, anything actually that plays music, and it takes the music in, and it will basically recreate the lowest bass frequencies of the music directly to your skin. So when I say it's like a subwoofer, it's basically silent. It doesn't make any sound. It just gives you that visual feeling of music directly into your body. And it's something that probably most of you will just kind of think now, it's a weird idea, like how could you actually do that? How could you give people such a full immersive experience in a tiny, tiny device that just sits on your arm? And I think so I can't right now demo it to everyone here in the room, but I just want to show you a quick video of someone who tried this for the very first time. This is an old video. It's about 1.5 years old. Just when we started, I was part of an accelerator here in Berlin at Beta House, and I demoed a first prototype to some people, and this is just one of the many reactions we saw.
Just like a Sunday.
Hey. Can you do it even stronger a bit? Oh, wow. Cool, man.
So now he basically,
So now
we
you're
keep
back
playing,
to
but we turn the
normal.
bass off.
So boring now. No?
So there's something really compelling and interesting about the basslet that we see over and over again. It's basically, you don't know that you need it until you tried it. It's something that basically people, once you put it on, the first moment is maybe a little bit weird. People find it interesting, and like this guy, he starts smiling. He actually enjoys, like we write here, music is a lot more fun, more personal, more intense. The interesting moment is when you take it away. It's a little bit like, imagine there was no stereo music, it was only mono, and then you would give someone a stereo headphone for the very first time in their life. They'd be like, oh, awesome, it's actually wider, there's somehow more space, more depth to the music. But then you take it away again and give them just a mono signal. There's just no way of going back to that old way of listening to music. And this is something that we actually see quite often when people try the basslet for the first time. So the basslet, at the moment, it looks like that. It's basically a wearable that you wear on your arm. It's wireless, so a lot of people ask us, how does it exactly work? How can you actually hook it up to devices that have just a headphone output? In the beginning, when we developed the basslet, we actually went for an app solution. So we had an app on the phone that would communicate directly with the basslet, and we tried this and user tested it, and we actually found out that a lot of people, it was actually here at Republica 1 year ago, we still had an app that we showed to people, and the feedback was basically, wow, this is amazing, but I also want to hook it up to my PlayStation, I want to hook it up to my HTC Vive, Oculus Rift, or to my keyboard, to my home studio setup. So we realized really like just being on a smartphone, being compatible with a smartphone is really limiting, especially in that space where people might be using any sort of device to listen to their music. So we said the only way we can work around this is to not have a software solution, but a plain hardware solution. So we have basically this that we call the sender. It plugs between your audio device and your headphones, and it just takes the signal that you're listening to, the audio that you're listening to, takes the bass frequencies and sends it wirelessly over to the baselet. And we also developed something that has extremely low latency, so you can't actually feel the delay that you usually have in wireless transmission between what you hear and what you feel. And this means it's out of the box compatible with anything. You don't have to switch, you don't have to learn a new app, you don't have to switch your player app on your phone, but you can also hook it up to any device, which also means you can use it for gaming or for watching a movie or anything actually that has a sound. Oh. Let me see. So another thing that's quite unique about us, so we're a startup here in Berlin. We started about 2 years ago. We are VC funded, and we have a team now of about 12, 13 people, depending on how you count it. The team is quite unique because it mostly comes out of music tech industry and consumer electronics industry. So we're basically a team of senior professionals with background in Sony Mobile, Nokia, Texas Instruments, Native Instruments, Ableton, Imagic, Apple. So there are a lot of different people that have been working in the industry. We've altogether probably released way over 70 products if you count all of them together. And in the beginning, when we started out working on the baselet, there was a pretty big challenge for us, which was, how do you put a subwoofer into something that size? I mean, anyone who knows about tech, about speakers, knows that subwoofers are usually the big boxes in the club on the floor that take a lot of power. They have huge membranes. They have to move a lot of mass to get this low bass frequency going. And when we started working on the baselet, we actually realized there's nothing on the market that can do that. There's no vibration technology that can actually recreate these really low sub-bass frequencies in such a small size and efficiently so that you can actually run it off a battery for many, many hours. After a lot of searching and traveling around the world and looking at universities who basically research in that area, we managed to hook up with a young gentleman who I would say is probably one of the top 10 mechanical engineers in haptics and robotics, and we're able to recruit him out of the university into our team, and together with him we basically developed a vibrotactile technology. So vibrotactile means it's a technology that is just for haptic feedback directly to the skin, so it's something that technically works like a speaker, but it creates vibration that is transmitted directly to the skin, and we were basically able to develop something that now, as we see today, is a cutting-edge technology. It's the most accurate, the smallest and most efficient tech on the market in that space of haptic technologies, and something that we're really proud of. Just as a side note, for us it's also interesting because we've developed this primarily for music, but we think it can actually be applied to a lot of use cases outside of music, like in automobile, if you have steering wheels with haptic feedback, if you have a PlayStation with a game controller that gives you the haptic feedback from the game. There are a lot of use cases for this kind of tech, and we think we're basically one of the leaders in providing this haptic technology. The baselet has been in development for about 2 years. And so this is basically our last internal prototype. It's a 3D printed body with the straps all homemade, basically. We're now doing the whole traveling to China, looking for contract manufacturers and sourcing. We will launch this summer on Kickstarter, so if you're interested, if you want to get the early bird discount and stay updated on where we are, then just go to our website or Twitter and follow us, because we'll be announcing there as soon as we launch on Kickstarter. Thank you very much. Oh, and if anyone wants to try this, so this is actually a working prototype. If anyone wants to try it, just find us after the panel talk and we'll be around. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. And now we're looking forward to the last of the four, to Mickael Pinto, and he will talk about the idea behind WAM, We Are Music. Mickael, the stage is yours. Have fun.
Is the remote linked? Hi everyone, my name is Mickael Pinto. I'm the CEO of WAM. We are music, and despite my terrible accent, we are actually based here in Berlin. I started working in the music industry back in 2010, and it really did not take me long to understand that there was a huge imbalance, a big mismatch actually. A mismatch between, in one end, the music creation and the music consumption actually, and in the other end, the music industry or the music business, as we call it, negatively speaking, most of the time. And I think we can all agree that consumers and creatives have been first adopters of the new technologies. I mean, and we understood this with my peers just before. I mean, they are leading the way forward in respect with how music is evolving. And in the other end, you've got these evils corporations from the music industry that are somehow stuck in extremely old-fashioned and traditional processes and using frameworks of other ages. And if there is one thing that is somehow centralizing and representing very well this gap in between the two, it's what we call the record deals. And I won't go into the details in respect with in respect with the record deals themselves, but for those who are not familiar with the record deals, it's basically the set of rules, of terms and conditions that rule the relationship between an artist and his or her label. And I think we all been hearing recently more and more artists claiming that record deals are somehow crap, that they lack fairness, that they lack transparency, that they are unbalanced. And at the end of the day, I mean, unless you're a big shot, you're pretty much in a situation as an artist to either take it or leave it when it's on the table. But why? I mean, let's try to put ourselves into the shoes of these bad guys. And I know it's going to be easier for some of us than for others, but let's try to understand the reason behind the majors and the labels in general being so greedy and tightening the hands on the throats of the artists. Well, first of all, it's fair to say, and everybody in the music industry understands this, that launching a new artist, promoting a new artist is actually extremely expensive. The figure everybody is somehow aligned on is that breaking a new artist, as it is called in the industry, costs around $1.5 million. And it's not a figure that is meant to decrease, because you can't really save on the costs, even though you scale and launch more and more artists. So this is a big issue for them. And mostly it's due to the fact that, again, as I was saying, they rely on extremely old-fashioned frameworks. And on top of that, the return on investment is actually extremely dodgy. I mean, it's a very, very risky business. And it's a business, and we see it as, at the end of the day, as end consumer. Because in order to divest the risk, in order to reduce the risk of these investments, we have less and less diversity in respect with what we are allowed to hear on a daily basis. So why? Why are these independent music artists still craving for a record deal if these deals are not good anymore? Why are they all willing to sign, to join the 3,000 happy fews which are lucky enough worldwide to have a signed agreement with a label? Well, because of the money, of course. I mean, and it's normal and fair to say that, of course, signing a record deal provides you with some safety and with the means to achieve your own objectives as an artist. But there are also some additional benefits to signing a deal which are very often not regarded to the right standards. And it's actually the capacity a record deal gives you to enter into the community. Signing a record deal is kind of getting a stamp. It's a door opener, and it's going to provide you with the credibility to open you the doors and to and when I say visibility, it's not towards the fans, but towards the entire ecosystem, and it will allow you basically to achieve your projects. So how is it to work without a record deal? Well, it's a very, very difficult scenario. And here I won't throw any facts on figures, but the reality is that the chances, the odds of making it happen, being successful, and here by being successful, I just mean earning a decent life, being an independent music artist, are very close to zero. And the reason behind this is that as an independent music artist, you're only a part of a gigantic puzzle. A music project is actually comprises a lot of different skills and expertise, and if you're on your own, it's very difficult to make it happen. Thankfully, a lot of tools appeared over the past years, and we discovered some of those today, and some of them have been in and around for quite some time, that allow the independent music artists not only to create, but to fund their own projects, to distribute their own project to the market. But this does not improve the odds of you making it happen as an independent music artist. And what we believe is the reason behind this is that all these tools, all these great tools, don't get me wrong, they all run as silos. They all run as independent sets of tools with no connection in between. So who's closing the dots, actually? Who's bridging all these gaps? And as an artist, advising me on which tool to use at the best time for me in my career. That's the reason why we came up with WAM. WAM is willing to streamline the artistic development process and to act as the umbrella that will basically close the synapses we've been talking about. WAM is a social network for the business, for the independent music artists that will basically provide the artists with all the right contacts at the right time, provide them with assistance in respect with what's the best type of content I shall read or hear about, what are the best connections I can make. But technology is only half of the answer. At the end of the day, what we intend to achieve in terms of providing an alternative to the traditional career path for the independent music artists can only be achieved through crowd collaboration. Because we believe that being autonomous and working as an independent music artist does not necessarily mean working on your own. So we believe that the path to success and the capacity for independent music artists to bridge both success whilst actually driving their own career forward is actually in relying into the power of the crowd working. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mickael. You can stay on stage. We will put on some chairs. And now, Julian and Vanja, I hope she's still here. Yeah, there she is. And Daniel is coming on stage too. So, okay. You can just sit down. These are chairs. They don't bite. They're very friendly and blue. Yeah. And the idea was that now we are opening for questions, but there are also the wish to have a discussion about the shifting of hierarchies. We heard something in the last talk, and I have a question right now to Vanja, because I was really interested in all of the tools, but this one was very interesting. I think there would a lot of bands 10 years ago love to have this tool. So how do you think how can this tool change the hierarchies? I mean, how can you change the music industry? Because there's no studio necessarily anymore, right?
Well, I guess the thing that I personally think is the coolest one is that you can create a virtual band and have your band members all over the world, and you can have completely different experiences in music and just meet up online and do something together. then of course it's a tool for publishing your music as well. But still, it's the problem that we heard about here is how do you find the listener? So that connection is still, I guess that's the big, like the big thing to solve right now, to find the listener and find like your alternative spots in the music business, I'd say.
Oh, yeah, I think actually what I like about your idea is the whole connectivity. So like you connect people, but you also connect like technology. You have apps inside your system. You have all this. Everything's connected, and I think that's one key thing you have to do if you want to disrupt the music business. Because frankly, when I was at the NAMM show, I didn't see that much innovation. And the most innovative things, and the one that most of our customers actually ask us to, is: can I connect it to Ableton Live? Can I connect it to a studio? Can I connect it to my I don't know, my MIDI pedal? Can I connect multiple devices to one phone? Can I connect multiple phones? And all this is very important because music is about collaboration, and it's what you just said, right? And so yeah, so this is one of our most important roadmap developments, is that we just released also a Mac app. We can sync it up to whatever.
I would say actually, in terms of the democratization of music and music listening versus music creation, it's interesting that technology has really made a big push towards democratization. Like even like companies like Ableton that I mentioned early on, their mantra is they want to democratize the recording studio. So 15, 20 years ago, you would, as a band, if you wanted to record an album, you would go into a studio and you would maybe pay 10, 15,000 euros just to rent the studio, just to have access to a computer or a tape machine and microphones. And I think the modern laptop basically has removed all of that. As a young band, if you don't have the budget, you just need someone in your band that has a laptop and you can run some software and you can actually record at a quality that is equivalent to something that you would get 15 years ago at a studio. However, so that's the music creation part, right? Then when it gets into monetization, so if you, as an artist, if you actually want to have access to distribution channels, it's interesting that there, I find, is still the biggest bottleneck. Even if there's streaming services like SoundCloud or Spotify, where technically you should have access as a young artist or band to distribute your music, it's still heavily controlled by record labels that really push their own agenda and their own artists. And so I find the whole music creation, like idea to creation to production, is basically completely democratized. You can create any production you want at any level with really, really little budget, and you don't have to depend on record labels to give you a big upfront payment. But when it comes to distribution, that's basically where I think the democratization is not quite there yet.
Well, I mean, just to jump on what you just said, there are actually like great services out there that provide a window for the independent music, I mean, for any artist in general to release his creations and to sell his creations with his fans and with the audience in general at the price they actually name. So if they want to sell their track at 1,000 euro, they can. I won't advertise on all these solutions, but there are some tools out there that allow you to do so. But that does not solve the visibility issue, obviously, how to stand out in the middle of the thousands and thousands of artists that can use these tools.
Just to add one more thing, I mean, what's interesting also with music creation or the music industry, it's actually quite a big equivalent to, for example, us as a technology startup or as a hardware startup, where, for example, we have much more access now to technologies like 3D printing, for example, where you would say 15 or 20 years ago, we couldn't actually develop this. It would be way too expensive to do something like that. And so it's like the music industry isn't the only place where creation has been democratized, and there are new technologies that basically enable anyone to jump in and create something on a base level that is really, really professional. But then again, also for us as a hardware startup, then getting into distribution and competing against, the marketing power of someone like Beats by Dre or so. That's basically yet another level that you have to master. And I think for artists it's the same. You can create something really, really good, but then if you have to market it and build up an audience, that's basically where now the really hard work is.
I think it's really interesting about that democratization of music, and we talk about that a lot at Soundtrap as well. And I mean, if you compare music to other art forms, like photo, for example, that has gone so much further than music. It's like everyone is on Instagram and everyone uses their phone to take photos. And I guess sometimes that might be a slow process because it's not 100% just good for the professionals to actually invite the whole world to do the things that you have done for your whole life and really been practicing hard to get good at, and then suddenly it's so easy to do it. But then it's good for the world. So I hope that this will happen for music as well. I mean, we're on our way.
But do you really think it's about easy, or because I think there's a big difference between democratizing, let's say, the technology or the facilities you need to record music and making music easy? Because I would say from my experience, I would say music will never be easy. If you want to make really good music, no matter what tools you have. I mean, if there was something like Instagram for music, and there are actually some tools out there, like the one-note wonders, where you download an app, you press a button, and then something really magic comes out. But then 5, 10, 15, or 100 people use it, and at that point it becomes completely ubiquitous, and it's of no interest to a listener anymore.
But it might be with a big worth for the maker, the music maker. Still, I mean, that's the big difference, I think. Even though it's still like to be like a professional violinist or something, you will still need to practice. And I guess what we're talking about here is also the technical difficulties. Exactly. Like to make it easy to record, for example, and then you might be a very, very professional musician, of course, anyway. But even though you're not, and you just want to play around with loops, for example, it will sound quite good. I mean, better than before you had the loops, and you might enjoy it yourself as a music maker. So
it's basically what you're saying is basically removing. So the music will always be requiring a certain level of expertise or inspiration, I would say. But what we're trying to do is basically reduce the level of complexity on the technical level. So, for example, if you make music on a laptop with something like GarageBand or Live or Logic or whatever you use, having these technical layers, like you have to load plugins, you have to navigate browsers, you have to basically deal with all that complexity of pushing the right buttons at the right time. And this is basically what separates you from being creative, because this is actually something that we've seen at Ableton a lot when people had creative ideas and they just want to record them right away. And then you start the computer, and then maybe the computer tells you, I want to update something, and then you actually need to wait for another minute until the computer updates something. Then you start the software to make music, and then that software tells you, I want to update something, or some plugin crashed, or something else went wrong. So there's a lot of technical complexity and technical layers in between you and your music. And I think this is basically where it's our obligation as technology companies that build something for people to make music, to try to reduce those layers as much as we can, so that as a performer, like as a bass player, for example, if I have an idea, I just pick up the bass and I play. I don't have to reboot anything, I don't have to update anything. And I think that's one of the few areas where laptops are really struggling to keep up with, to have that immediacy of a hardware, of an acoustic instrument, I would say. Any more questions from the audience? Anything?
Thank you.
Well, I work as an audio engineer, but not on the music market, but on audio post-production for movies and stuff. And I do work there sometimes with open sound libraries, and which is quite an idea, a little bit like your idea with creating music, but I always have two problems there. One problem is that it's really hard to find the right sound you are looking for, And the second problem is that if you find the right sample, you have issues in the quality, because many people are recording their sounds with iPhones and stuff, and it just sounds not like recorded with professional stuff. You have issues with noise and stuff. And so how do you prevent to getting too much of this low quality within your app, so that the good stuff will get lost in between?
Okay, so first of all, we don't have an open library inside the studio. We don't have we might have in the future, but right now it's not possible to add your own loops or anything like that. So it's very we have our professionals doing the loops. But maybe you meant more like in the community? Yes, okay. So we have moderators who picks up stuff that they think are good and adds them on our featured list. And then, of course, as on any other SoundCloud and similar sites, it's up to the listeners to see how many plays it gets. But still, I mean, you're always free to publish your song, so it will be high and low in the Explore field there. Yeah.
I have a question concerning WAM, because I didn't understand how the umbrella works. Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Sure, definitely. Well, I mean, not entering too much into the technical aspects of our solution, our ambition is really to get to know our users by assessing and analyzing and qualifying their behaviors, and in order basically for us to assess what we call internally the artistic maturity. So we basically leverage on all the inputs, all the data that we have available from the different social networks that our users connect to the platform, and we also assess the behaviors of the users in our platform so that we better understand who we can put them in touch with, or which type of content will be relevant for them at this moment in time. Because, for example, let's say I'm a jazz singer and I'm looking for a jazz guitarist. I'll look for a different type of jazz guitarists depending of how long I've been into the market, depending of the music genres, the type of jazz I like. So we're going to compare if we have two profiles to recommend you, for example, as a potential business partner, as a potential business matching for you, we're gonna use the data that we get from both your Facebook accounts, for example, and there are strong probabilities that if you've both have been to the same concerts 3 years ago, that you like the same bands, that you did somehow the same type of searches using hashtags or whatever data we have available about both of you. I mean, using this data and qualifying this data, will be able to rank these profiles according to the one that could be the best potential match for you. And it's the same for the type of opportunities we're going to present you with. It's going to be the same for the type of educational content we're going to push to you.
Any other questions? Anything you like to say?
Just well, the thing what I think we all have in common is that we want to shake the hierarchies, definitely in the music business. We want to bring more diversity, and we want to bring more people to the stage. I mean, this is everything we have in common. Is when we talk about simplifying technology, when we talk about crowd collaboration, it's all about giving opportunities and giving more people the capacity to go out there and make it happen.
So, seems to be a good point. Ein gutes finales Wort. Thank you very much. for the talk.
Thank you.
And if you want to try out the gadgets, I think you can just come here. Can I have this bracelet, please?
Yes.